Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is John Campea, and this is a companion video. What is a companion video? Well, I'm awfully glad that you asked. To see, every day on the John Campea Show, Monday through Friday, we save time to take live questions from the audience, but we don't always have time to get around to all the live questions that get sent in, but I want to make sure those questions get answered properly in a video, so I gather them up and we address them here on companion videos. So we got a bunch of questions from this morning we still have to get through, so let's not waste any time and dive right into it. And we're going to start things off here with Daniel Birnacki, who writes, "Good morning, John and crew. Top 5, The Prestige. Number 2, Star Wars The Original Trilogy. Number 3, Maverick." I'm assuming you mean the one with Mel Gibson, James Garner, and, who was in that with them? Jodie Foster. I'm assuming you mean that one. Anyway, 4, Casino Royale. 5, Spaceballs. Nice list. You know, The Prestige is one of those movies for me. Here's the funny thing about The Prestige for me. I love The Prestige. I love that movie. Except for the ending. It's the one Christopher Nolan film. I don't think every Christopher Nolan film is perfect, but I've never disliked the ending of a Christopher Nolan film. You know what I'm saying? And Prestige is the one I don't like that ending at all. And I won't give it away for those of you who haven't seen it, but it involves Hugh Jackman. I did not like its conclusion. You know what I mean? I don't like what their explanation was. That to me didn't fit with the rest of the movie. But right up until that point, I adore that movie. Absolutely love it. And it always does my heart good to see Spaceballs on the list. So thanks for your list, Daniel. All right, Jesse writes, my friend saw it too. As I move things over, it's a little okay. My friend saw it too, and while she was there, we put a red balloon in her driveway. The next day, she told us finding the balloon was scarier than the movie. Okay, first of all, Jesse, that sounds like one of the most ultimate things ever. That sounds funny. I hope one of you guys had a video camera rolling on her getting home and finding that balloon, because that would be hilarious. I love it. That's great. All right, Stephen Foley writes, hey, John, Knives Out reviews coming out of TIFF are crazy good. We talked about that on the show this morning. As of right now, or at least as of the recording in this video, the critic reviews for Knives Out, that's the new Rian Johnson film with Daniel Craig, Chris Evans, Michael Sheen, or Michael Shannon, I should say. Or is it Sheen or Shannon? Which one is in there? Anyway, on and on. Toni Collette is in there. Huge, unbelievable cast. As of this recording, Knives Out has 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. And it's not just barely 100%. I mean, like the critics who are talking about it, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot more critics and some won't like it. But as of right now, every single one of them is raving about this film, which makes me kind of excited. So I can't wait to see it. All right, Clay Woodley writes, my top 10 superhero films in no particular order. The Dark Knight, that's on mine too. Spider-Man 2, also on mine. X-Men 2, Civil War, The Winter Soldier, Logan, absolutely. Deadpool, yep. The First Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame. That is a solid sounding list. Solid sounding list. I did my top 10 a while ago, and I might have to update it at some point, because maybe one or two that were on there won't be on there anymore. But it's always amazing now, because if you look at a top 10 comic book movie list today, as opposed to say 5 years ago, how our lists have changed really is a testimony to how much better comic book movies have gotten. The comic book movie genre, it's taken a long time, but it's matured. And it's gotten, I don't mean mature as in only for adults. I mean matured as in they've come into their own. And enough people have made comic book movies now that we're really starting to see people learning. We learn what works. We learn what doesn't work. We start to explore new territory, and it's an amazing thing to see. So anyway, thanks for sharing that list, Clay. All right, Pablo Diablo writes, I watched Endgame with my folks. In the beginning where we see a malnourished Tony, my mom asked me if Robert Downey Jr. was... Okay, that's not what I thought you were going to say. Okay, so for those of you listening to the audio-only podcast of this, my Patreon supporters, he wrote, my mom asked me if Robert Downey Jr. was back on the drugs again. Okay, hashtag Filipina mom. That sounds like something a Filipina mom would say. Having a Filipino mother-in-law. That sounds like something a Filipino mom would say for sure. Ask me if Robert Downey Jr. is back on the drugs again. Hey, listen, what a testimony, though, to just how good the visual effects today are, right? Like, she looked at him and just thought he's on the drugs again. No, it was actual visual effects. Anyway, that's great, Pablo. Thanks for sharing the story, dude. Punto Baby writes, My top 10 favorites. Number 128 days later. 28 days later. That one's never been out. / 28 weeks later. Orange County. That's not another one that was not put on here. The 1999 version of Life. Which one is that? I'm not quite sure off the top of my head. 1999 version of Life. I'm not familiar with it. Straight up, I'm not familiar with that. So, interesting. Okay. Number 4, The Dark Knight. Number 5, Transform. Oh, you hurt me, Punto. But that's the beautiful thing about films, man. It's subjective. If that one works for you, then that one works for you. Saving Private Ryan, X-Men Days of Future Past, Tron Legacy, really, Quantum of Solace, and 10 Casino. That's a real mix of films there. You got some horror, got some comic book, you got some sci-fi, you got some Bond films in there. Real eclectic mix. I like that, Punto. Even if I don't agree with all the ones you got on the list, but that's the great thing about these lists. We're not going to agree on all of them, but they work for you, and that's the important thing. Thanks for sharing it, dude. All right. Where are we at here? Ska C writes, was already excited for Knives Out, but the reviews from the Toronto International Film Festival are insane, with many calling it the best movie of the year so far. The anticipation. I'm telling you what, when I first heard about it, I thought, oh, this sounds really cool. The director of Looper doing a old style Agatha Christie whodunit sort of thing. That sounds pretty cool. I'm on board. But I wasn't thinking it was going to be like potentially a movie that would be in the best movie of the year discussion. And again, I haven't seen it, so I don't know for sure, but you're right. The reviews right now coming out for it are stellar. I'm excited about it. Can't wait to see it. Scott C follows up with Goldfinch reviews suck despite the Oscar buzz. Well, I mean, I've never heard any Oscar buzz for Goldfinch myself. I know there are a lot of people that are very excited about it because it's based on a novel and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, the last I checked, and maybe it's gone up since, but the last I checked, the Goldfinch was sitting at 37%, which is an ouch. There are worse scores it could have, but that's an ouch, especially for a film that I think the studio had a lot of hope for. Let's see here. Paul writes, after seeing the early reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, do you think Hustler could be the surprise movie of the year? Some even say J-Lo's performance is Oscar-worthy. Let me bring it up. I've been hearing a bunch of people talking about the critic scores for Hustlers, I should say. And as of right now, it's sitting at 96%. 96%. So when you ask me, could this potentially be like the surprise film of the year? I'd have to say it's in the running because I'll be honest with you, I have not taken this movie seriously. Not because of the subject matter, but because the trailer. I saw the trailer. It's like, that's not very good. The trailer didn't look good to me at all. Not at all. So now seeing these reviews and seeing it getting a critic score of like 96%, I'd have to say, because I had be honest with you, I had low expectations, pretty damn low expectations. If it ends up being really good, like not even one of the top 10 best films of the year, let's just say if Hustlers ends up being really good, then it is a big contender for my number one surprise film of the year because my expectations have been very, very low for it, mostly because of the trailer. I didn't like the trailer so far. So it's got to be a candidate. We'll have to wait and see. All right. Lucas Wilson writes, where are we? There it is. Am I the only person who doesn't get excited when movies are announced? A lot of movies get announced, but not all get made. When it actually goes into production, then I'm interested. See, and here's the funny thing, Lucas. A lot of people misinterpret news coming out about a studio developing a movie and a movie being announced. Like, see, for a movie to be announced, that means the studio itself is proclaiming publicly, we are making this movie. Now, a lot of times studios go into development on a movie, and one of the major trades, because they have contacts and sources, one of the major trades finds out that a studio is developing it, and they will report, hey, you know, Disney or Warner Brothers or Paramount are developing such and such movie. And we all talk about it and get excited. Hey, so they're making a whatever movie. Neat. But that is different from a studio coming out and putting out a press release saying, we are officially going to go into production on this movie. Those are two different things. Although often to us as fans, they often appear one and the same. Understandably so, but they appear one and the same to us. But I think, Lucas, now with these big trades getting the inside line on like easier, it's becoming easier and easier for the trades to find out that studios are going into development on certain movies, that we are seeing more and more movies that we hear are getting developed never actually happen. Like movies in development have always then never gone on to get made. That's always happened. It's just that now I believe these trades have such inside lines on what's going on at the studios that we find out about more of them a lot more often. And as a consequence, we also hear about a lot more that then never actually happened. So I get it, Lucas, but I would say this. If a studio comes out and puts out a press release and like Paramount says, we're doing this, you can 95% be sure that that's going to happen. But anything else, yeah, I'm kind of with you. I'm starting to get to the point where the tangibilization, like I got to hear it's now shooting, or I got to see a trailer, that tangibilization. And I'm finding a lot more movies. I am adopting the I'll believe it when I see it sort of mentality. Like they keep saying they're going to make another Indiana Jones. Okay, but I'll believe it when I see it. Like, and so I'm finding with more and more movies like you, unless it's something big and huge and major, in which case they wouldn't let that out unless they were doing it. But for the most part, I'm adopting I'll believe it when I see it. Like, talk to me again when the studio announces they've begun principal photography. Talk to me when they announce they've wrapped production. Talk to me when the first trailer, like, I'll believe it when I see it. And I can't blame you for that, Lucas. I cannot blame you for that. All right. Slim Trav writes, over under 25%, Null and She-Venom appears in Venom 2. Okay. No, and she, like both under 25%. At least one, I'll go over 25%. All right. Fanjecture writes, a total budget of about $350 million, production and advertising. It'll need close to $550 million to break even. Is that enough for this franchise? Yet even happen? We will see. Dark Fate, my bad. Here's the thing. Have they announced what the production budget? Because I haven't heard what the production budget on this Terminator film is. Because I can't believe they spent like $150 million on advertising. I mean, they might have, but I haven't, I haven't seen enough marketing for Terminator Dark Fate for me to believe that they've spent $150 million on it. I mean, it's possible. It's possible. There's no official budget listed, at least not on Box Office Mojo. But let's put it this way. If it does come into $350 million, and I have a hard time believing it might be, but I have a hard time believing it's that much. But if it is that much, then yeah, you're talking about $550, $600 million they're going to need just to break even. Can this movie make that much? I don't know. You know, we talked on the show this morning about, you know, the lack of buzz there is about this film. And why is that? Why is there such a lack of buzz? And it seems like even if this movie is great, and maybe it is, I mean, you got Tim Miller directing it, why not? But even if this movie's great, I have a hard time believing it can make $600 million. I'll be impressed if it does. Actually, how much did Terminator Genesis make? How's that? I think I spelled the Genesis wrong. There, now I spelled it right. Terminator Genesis worldwide made 440. And here's the problem. Making only 440, and it was a bad movie, they're going to have an even harder time now getting audiences to come out to a new one. Because everybody remembers that last one we went to go see, you know, as some people call it, Terminator Jenny Smith. Genesis was a bad movie. And that's going to stick in people's heads, which is going to make it even harder for them to get. So it's an uphill climb, man. It's definitely going to be an uphill climb. How much of an uphill climb, we'll have to wait and see. All right. Run Amok Design writes, enjoyed your segment a few days ago about Feige being groomed to take over for Horn. I mean, we don't know if he is or not, but it just seems to make sense to me. If you want to know what he's talking about, just search my YouTube channel. You'll be able to find that discussion. Do you think Favreau would be a good number 2 pick? Actor, producer, and hands in Disney, Marvel, and Star Wars thoughts? No. No, I don't think John Favreau would be good for that. I don't think John Favreau has ever done anything remotely close to what that job entails. He's been a producer, but he hasn't been like the lead producer on many films. And quite frankly, he is more of a director than he is a producer. And a director is not what you need for that role. You don't need a director to take over either Kevin Feige's current role, and you don't need a director to take over Alan Horn's role. You need somebody with experience primarily as the lead producer and creative force behind multiple films and stuff like that. John Favreau has been listed as a producer on a bunch of movies, but like even with Spider-Man Far From Home, John Favreau's listed as a producer, but he's talked about this in interviews. He had no idea what was going on with that movie. None. I mean, he was a producer in name only. So while John Favreau is a sexy name right now, the answer to that question is absolutely not. He doesn't have the experience, and really he is primarily a director. You can't have a director in Kevin Feige's role. Because when you're a director on a film, your life is tied up in that one movie and that one movie only for like years. Kevin Feige has got to be directly involved in overseeing like 4 movies per year, 5 projects per year. I mean, so no, I honestly right now, while I love John Favreau, holy crap, I love John Favreau. Is that the right job for him? I don't think so. But that's just my opinion. I don't think that's a good fit whatsoever. Let's see here. The Sock writes, you mess with Spidey, you mess with New York. You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. Favorite movie moment ever, gets me anytime. From a not entirely beloved Spider-Man film. But I like that moment. That is a good moment. So I dig that one too. I'm with you, Sock. All right. Nmander33 writes, I like the cast for Just Mercy, and I'm optimistic it will do well. What are your thoughts? Well, we talked about Just Mercy the other day when the trailer dropped. We did an entire segment on it. I think it looks wonderful. I mean, first of all, I'm already a sucker for these true story movies. I'm a sucker for those. It's true stories movies about somebody getting justice. That's also I'm a sucker for. You add in a cast like an Academy Award winner, Jamie Foxx, and you might add in future Academy Award winner, Michael B. Jordan, and another Academy Award winner in Brie Larson. And then you look at the trailer. It looks awesome. I mean, it looks great. I can't wait to watch that damn movie. All right. Double Crit writes, saw It Chapter 2 and was worried that it would be another Emperor's New Clothes situation with everyone saying it's great except me. I'm glad I was wrong. Well, which part were you wrong about? That everybody was saying it's great, or that it does turn, because not everybody's saying it's great. Where is it right now, as a matter of fact? Hold on a second. If I look up It Chapter 2 Rotten Tomatoes, last I checked it was at 67%. Maybe it's gone up. No, it's gone down. It's now gone down to 64%. I didn't like it. I personally didn't like the film, and I love the first one. The first one's awesome. Love it. This one I was disappointed by. But listen, that's the important thing here is that you enjoyed it. That's the important thing. Just because I didn't like it doesn't mean you're not supposed to like it. If you liked it, that's awesome. All right. SC writes, felt Chris Evans was better than Robert Downey Jr. in Endgame. God, I did love Chris Evans in that movie. He was so good in it. And you know what? I'm going to say an unpopular opinion here. I think Chris Evans has been better in the MCU than Robert Downey Jr. They've both been great. Don't misinterpret me. They're both great in it. I would actually give the slight nod to Chris Evans. Except, I think in Endgame, I would give the slight edge to Robert Downey Jr. I still don't think Robert Downey Jr. should be considered for an Oscar nomination for this, but I think he's great in it. And I think Chris Evans is great in it. But while I think Chris Evans overall in the MCU has been a little bit better as Captain America, I actually think in Endgame, Robert Downey Jr. might have just edged that one out a little bit in that one movie. Whatever. I mean, it's all great and they're both wonderful, but we'll see what happens. All right. Paige Chowdhury writes, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. My top 10 in no particular order. Empire Record. That's a good one. I got a guy I know is actually in that. If I'm thinking of the right movie, that's the one Johnny Whitworth's in. Hold on, let me just double check this one. Empire Records. I think that's the one that Johnny's in. Yeah, Johnny Whitworth is in the. I love Johnny Whitworth. I think that dude's amazing. Anyway, Empire Record, A Time to Kill, nice. Hope Floats, really. Fried Green Tomatoes. That's the first time anybody's listed that. It's again, not in my top 10, but it's a wonderful movie. That's really badly overlooked. Steel Magnolias is a classic. Saving Private Ryan. Seven, The Matrix. Oh, bless your heart for putting Paddington 1 and 2 on there. And Malcolm X, another overlooked one. Look, this list just kind of highlights again why I am loving people sending in these lists. Like, you get all these amazing movies. Almost every time somebody's putting one on there that's never been on anybody else's. The fact that you got Paddington 1 and 2 in there, I love. Fried Green Tomatoes, completely overlooked. And Steel Magnolias, nobody's mentioned that one too. Love the list. Paige, love the list, if I'm pronouncing your name right. Thanks for putting that up there. Let's see. Jordan Sperlin writes, It Chapter 2. I see it as a hit, and I thought it was good, about a tie with the first one. Can't wait to own it. Yeah, we discussed on the show today. Look, It Chapter 1 opened to $123 million opening weekend. It Chapter 2 opened to 91. Some people trying to make the argument that means that It Chapter 2 is a disappointment and a flop. To which I said, and I don't think this is a good movie. I don't think It Chapter 2 is a good movie. But I will tell you, are you kidding me? $91 million opening weekend for an R-rated horror movie? That's a hit. By any definition, that's a hit. And I don't even like the movie, and I'm saying that's a hit. So that's my thoughts on it. All right, Talking Star Wars writes, over under 83%, Kenobi says hello there in Kenobi. 83 is too high. I'm going to go under. I think he does say it, but 83 is too high a number. So I'm going to take the under on that. All right. Martin Molina writes, greetings from Texas. Well, greetings, Martin. Love the show. Thank you so much. Any thoughts on Interview with the Vampire, and The Butterfly Effect? I watch those movies every October. I'll be honest. Okay, first of all, I love Interview with the Vampire. I think that movie's great. I love it. I'm not a big fan of Butterfly Effect. I never have been. I remember the first time I watched it, I'm like, eh. And then even when it started to take on a little bit of a cult classic sort of status, I went back and watched it again, and I'm like, no, that one doesn't work for me, unfortunately. But I'm happy that it works for you. But I love Interview with the Vampire. You know, what a tremendous cast in that movie. It's profoundly interesting, even as the narrative progresses. I love it. I think it's great. So I'm glad you watch it one every year, man. All right. Min Tran writes, Top 10. Liar, Liar. That's the first one. That's the first time that's been brought up. Here Comes the Boom. I've never seen that. Real Steel. I really like Real Steel, by the way. I got to interview Sugar Ray Leonard for Real Steel. He did a lot of the fight choreography for Real Steel. Anyway. Hidden Figures, wonderful film. Harry Potter 7 Part 2. Logan, The Edge of 17. I love Edge of 17. First 50 Dates. I don't like that one, but so many of my friends love that one. Number 2, Spotlight, Best Picture winner, fabulous film. And The Hate You Give, which was really big last year as well. Again, a number of films on here I haven't seen on anybody else's list. Liar, Liar hasn't been. Here Comes the Boom hasn't been. Real Steel, Hidden Figures. Edge of 17 hasn't been on one yet. 51st Dates hasn't been on one yet. Spotlight has been, and The Hate You Give. See, that's a great thing. Like, all these top 10s and so many people putting up films that no one else has mentioned yet. I love that. Thanks for the list, man. All right. Darth Sidious writes, fun fact about Robert Pattinson, he also played Cedric Diggory in the 4th Harry Potter movie, or was it the 3rd one? Wasn't he in both? Wasn't he in 2 of them? Anyway. Yeah, we've talked about that a lot. That's come up a lot on this channel, Darth, completely. That some people are saying that when they think of Robert Pattinson, they don't even think of Twilight. They think of Harry Potter. So there you go. The dude's been in 2 of the most popular young adult things ever, in Harry Potter and Twilight. So that dude's got a fan base. And now that fan base is going to come out for Batman, and I think that's exciting. All right. Great Shot Productions writes, do you think any animated films will be nominated for Best Picture? Toy Story 4, How to Train Your Dragon 3. Will Dragon Ball Broly get nominated for Best Animated Film? No to both. I don't think this year any of the films, if any have a chance, it might be Toy Story 4. Toy Story 4 might have a chance to get a Best Picture nom, but I wouldn't count on it. I wouldn't count on it. Possible outside chance, but I doubt it. And I don't think Dragon Ball will get nominated for Best Animated. It might. I'm not saying it won't. Don't misquote me. You're asking me if I think it will, though? I don't think it will. All right, JC Am writes, thoughts on Cinepolis is it Cinepolis or Cinepolis? Anyway, VIP. It's a small theater chain. I've never been to one. I know there's one in the LA area, but I've honestly never been to it, so can't really give a thought on it. Phoenix Arising Com writes, what happened to Minecraft movie? Don't know. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think something came out about that. You know what? I take that back. There was a news story a little while ago, and we talked about it on the show, that I believe they moved it a year. If I'm not mistaken, I believe they moved it a year. Let's see if I can find that story again. Anyway, if I'm not mistaken, it's still on. They're still doing it. It just got moved. But it's getting to the point now. It's like, is Minecraft even still going to be a thing by the time that movie comes out? And I'll kind of believe it when I see it. We'll have to wait. Sidhu's Screening Room writes, top 10 in no particular order: Magnolia, Jurassic Park, A Ghost Story. See, A Ghost Story, I'll get to that in a second. Django Unchained, love it. X-Men First Class, The Social Network, Rush Hour 2, The Nice Guys. That's the first time I've seen Nice Guys. Fargo and The Shining, a bunch of first-timers on there. A Ghost Story. See, that's an A24 film. And I was really intrigued by it when I first saw the promos for it. And let's put it this way. To me, it felt like it was trying to be artistic more than it was trying to be good. And the two aren't mutually exclusive. You can do them both. Another great example of a movie that focused so much on being artistic that it forgot to be good was the Jennifer Lawrence film Mother. Remember that? It focused so much on being artistic that it forgot to be good. And you can do both. Like a movie like Her is a great example of that. Very artistic film, but also awesome. You can do both. It doesn't have to be one or the other. To me, Ghost Story was kind of like that. It felt like a movie that was more concerned with being artistic than it was about being good. But that being said, Sidhu, you're not the first person I've known that said it's one of their favorite movies. I know a number of people, actually, who adore that movie, and you are clearly one of them, so good for you for having it on your list, man. Solid list. I love that you got The Nice Guys on there, too. I love that movie. Anyway, JC Am writes, their top 10 in no particular order: The Social Network, Gravity, Interstellar, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. You know what? I'll get back to that in a second. Sicario, The Departed, love that. Forgetting Sarah Marshall, one of my favorite comedies. The Big Short, The Royal Tenenbaums. I think that's the first time that's popped up here. And Gone Girl is brilliant. Now, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. I thought I was alone in the universe. That I'm with you. I actually think the American version of Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the one with Daniel Craig and Rooney Mara, was actually better than the original version. And I say that and I bring that up and I get ugly looks from people. How dare you say that? I know, but it's true. That's what I think. I actually preferred, I like that movie, and I actually thought it was, and I like the original version. I just thought this one was, I think this is one of those few times when the remake was better than the original. It happens sometimes, folks. It happens. You don't have to agree, whatever. So I'm glad you got that on there, JC. All right. Brett WB writes, oh, Canada, Bianca, ladies and gentlemen, Bianca. She's the North indeed. What a year for her. So classy, resilient, and flat out dominant. What a year she's been having, and came out of nowhere to a lot of people and won the US Open, beating Serena Williams in the final. What a thriller, too, because I think she was up like 5-1 in the final set. And like Serena roared back to tie it and something, but then Bianca ultimately took it. Good Canadian kid. I might be wrong about this. I think she's the first Canadian female to ever win the US Open. Could be wrong about that. I'm not really sharp on my US Open tennis history, but I think that's the case. Anyway. All right. We move on now. Santez Henderson writes, Favorite movies: Batman and Robin, Showgirls, Spawn. Okay, well, hey, you're obviously being facetious, but if you were being serious, it's all subjective. And if those were your favorite films, and those are your favorite films, I got a feeling that's not actually your favorite films, though. All right, Luis Herrera writes, have you seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? If so, what do you think about it? You must be relatively new to the channel. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. does come up once in a while. I think it is a bag of shit show. I think it's absolutely terrible. I love Clark Gregg. That dude can do no wrong in my eyes. And I like the character of Agent Coulson, but unfortunately, I think they've built a very, very poor show around him, and I detest the show. I think it's terrible. But hey, I know a lot of you guys like it, and that's great. I'm not poo-pooing on you for liking it. I think that's great if you do, but I wish I liked it. I just think it's terrible. All right, S. Beam writes, my first remembered movie-going experience was in 1989, Batman, in a tiny theater in Minnesota. I love how the cinematic Batman has evolved. Nolan's is the best. You know, it's funny, SB, because I have a treasured memory of Batman. Now, I told the story about 2.5 years ago. My best friend growing up died. And anyway. And him passing away was a real jolt to me. And it was one of the things that kind of spurred me to leave my last job. Because one of the things my friend had said a few times, and it always stuck with me, is, you know what? Life's too short to not be happy. And I realized that, you know, I was in a situation that I wasn't happy. And not that things were awful or terrible. I wasn't happy. And him passing away kind of helped push me over the edge of saying, you know, I'm going to leave the job I was at. And I came off and started doing my own thing on my own, which I'm super glad that I did. And I've been enjoying every minute of it. But that friend of mine, his name is Brendan. When we were kids, we took the bus to downtown Hamilton. And see, downtown Hamilton isn't like downtown. It's literally downtown, because Hamilton is kind of split in two. My city that I grew up in, Hamilton, which is where they shot Titans and where they're shooting Doom Patrol and a lot of shows, but it really split in half. There's the mountain, and then there's downtown. There's literally the Hamilton Escarpment that you actually got to drive down the mountain to get to downtown. Anyway, Brendan and I took a bus to Jackson Square in Hamilton, where there was a movie theater, and he and I went to go see Batman. The Michael Keaton Batman. It was the first time I had ever gone to a movie where there was a lineup around the block. Couldn't believe it. I had never seen anything like that at the time. And we went in and watched it. And when my friend passed away, understandably, that movie took on more significant memories for me. And I cherish that, and I'm glad you've got a significant memory of it too, S-Beam. Thanks for sharing it, dude. All right. Adam K. writes, I'm confused why you were against Black Panther's Best Picture nomination. Because it wasn't a good enough movie to be nominated for Best Picture. It's really nothing to be confused about. I get you prefer Infinity War and Spider-Verse, but Black Panther was still in your honorable mentions. It wasn't good enough. Here's the other thing, right? From a subjective point of view, it simply is flat out not good enough to be nominated for Best Picture. It wasn't even the best movie of its genre, let alone to be nominated. There were 2 other comic book movies that were better than it that same year. But beyond that, do you know how many times in the decades and decades and decades, and of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of movies in the history of the Oscars that have been nominated for Best Picture, do you know how many have been nominated for Best Picture without any nominations in any of the other major categories? No Best Actor, Best Actress, no Best Screenplay, no Best Cinematography, no Best Director, none of the major categories. Do you know how many films out of the hundreds of movies that have been nominated for Best Picture over the years have been nominated without getting at least one other major nomination? I think 1. Maybe 2, and the last time it happened was like in the 1940s. So even the Academy didn't think, like, to me, I'm sorry, but if a movie, the direction wasn't good enough that it got a Best Director nomination, The performances weren't good enough to get Best Actor, Actress, Supporting Actor, or Supporting Actress nomination. The script wasn't good enough to get a Best Screenplay nomination. The cinematography wasn't good enough to get a Best Cinematography nomination, and a number of other big ones. If it wasn't good enough to get even one nomination in any of the major categories, you're going to have a really hard time convincing me that it deserves a Best Picture nomination. Really? Really? So it's a combination. That, number one, to me, it just clearly wasn't a good enough movie to be nominated for Best Picture. But on the other hand, too, even by the Oscars' own standards, I guess, like, it shouldn't. If a movie can't even get one nomination in any of the major categories, how on earth does it get a Best Picture nomination? It just shouldn't happen. And so I kind of feel a little bit like Black Panther being nominated. Now, I know a couple of voting members of the Academy. And I know for a fact that a couple of them legitimately liked Black Panther enough that they felt it was one of the top 6, 7, 8, 9 movies of the year. And they cast a ballot for it to be nominated because that's how they felt about it. Fine. I accept that. I think that's probably the majority. But I can't help but feel that we are seeing the Oscars come under more and more pressure to not nominate what is best, but rather nominate what's popular. And it's a trend I hate. The Oscars should not. You want what's popular? Go to the fucking MTV Movie Awards. You know, go if you want a thing for popular stuff. Go to the MTV Movie. Go to that horse shit. The Oscars are supposed to be above what's popular or not popular, what's financially successful or not financial. It's supposed to be above that. It's supposed to be about all these people, these 7,000 voting members of the film industry to vote on what is best. And I believe we are seeing a growing pressure on the Academy Awards to abandon what is best and go with what is popular. And I think, and you know, I can't say this is the truth. This is just what I suspect. Okay. It's just what I suspect. I suspect Black Panther getting a nomination is a result of that mounting pressure on the Oscars to vote for what is popular as opposed to what is best. Because if it was one of the best, it would have gotten some nomination and won in any of the other major categories. And it didn't. It just simply didn't. And like I said, it wasn't even in the top 2 of its own genre. Like, how can you make an argument that it should be nominated for Best Picture when it's not even the best film of its genre? It's not even the second best film of its genre. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was clearly better, in my opinion. And Avengers Infinity War, I believe, was a better film than Black Panther. But, you know, whatever. It got nominated. It did. It's all up to the individual voters and their tastes. So, yeah, that's why I am against you. So you say I'm confused. Why am I against Black Panther's nomination? Because I didn't think it was good enough. Nothing confusing about that. I did not think it was a good enough movie, and the fact that it got no other nominations just kind of supports that. But anyway, not no other nominations, but no other nominations in any of the major categories. And that never happens. Never happens. Not since at least the 40s has that happened. Anyway, but that's just me. All right, Adam K. writes, so if it's that good, why is it that big an issue? Sorry, what are we talking about? Oh, because that's built on the black. Well, I went in and I just explained it all. You know, it went against history. It went against the fact that no movies ever get nominated for Best Picture without at least one nomination in one of the other major categories. And it wasn't even the best film of its genre. So all that, I think, speaks to it. Now we say, why is it that a big issue? I don't make a huge issue out of it. When it comes up, I will say Black Panther shouldn't have been nominated. But it's not like I'm picketing in front of the Academy going, how dare you nominate this movie? It's not like I'm making 20 videos a day about the outrage that Black Panther got nominated. It's not that big of a deal. But it's an issue. It's an issue. So if somebody brings it up and asks me, or if the nominee list from 2018 comes up, I will mention Black Panther shouldn't have been nominated. It doesn't meet the quality test. It wasn't even the best film of its genre. And it doesn't have any nominations in any of the other major categories, which every film, 500 of, 600 of the films that have been nominated for Best Picture of the Year have all had at least one nomination in one of the other major categories, with the exception of one or two back in the 30s and 40s. But in the last 70 years, anyway, so I think I make a pretty compelling argument. But again, it's all subjective. That's just the way I feel. That doesn't mean that that's the way you need to feel. If you feel differently, that's the beautiful thing about movies, brother. All right. Liam Donaghy writes, when I acted Snatch, do you mean in Snatch? I was talking to this actor in the trailer for 2 hours, got a Polaroid of him acting goofy around me. Little did I know, 10 years later, I was joking around with Benicio del Toro. That's awesome. That's cool. Hey, if you still have that picture, that makes it great. By the way, Snatch is in my top 20. Not my top 10, but I talk about it all the time. Snatch is in my top 20. Protection from what? The Germans? That movie's so good. That movie is so good. And I am a fan for life, man. And it made me a Guy Ritchie fan for life. And by the way, how good did Guy Ritchie do with Aladdin? Right? Unbelievable. Anyway, thanks for sharing that, Liam. All right, next up. KW Garrett 83 writes, hot take. Why is Citizen Kane a classic? In your opinion, does it deserve all the praise? I think it's okay, but not an example of cinematic perfection. But here's the thing, KW. This is part of the reason. First of all, I think Citizen Kane is great. Do I think it is the greatest movie of all time? Is it in my top 10? No. But when you also take into consideration the era in which it was released, Citizen Kane, as far as the art of filmmaking goes, was so far ahead of its time. It was so far ahead of its time. I'd be hard pressed to think of a lot of other films that have come out that have been as far ahead of its time like Citizen Kane was. So to me, is it to me the greatest film of all time like some people purport it to be? Nah, not to me. Do I even have it in my top 10? No, I'll be frank. I don't even have it in my top 20. It's in my top 50 though. It's not my top 20. But I think you also have to look at it in the context of the era in which it was made and what was filmmaking like around that time. And then you realize just how profoundly advanced it was. It says a lot. You know what it's like? It's like saying, I don't get it. I watched the original Star Wars. The visual effects aren't that good. Yeah, but you're watching it now. In an era where visual effects techniques and the tools involved and all that kind of stuff have so far advanced and come along, you got to understand at that time, nobody had ever seen anything like that. What they did in Star Wars, nobody had really seen anything like that at the time. It was so far ahead of its time. And like with things people do narratively and writers and techniques used and the way, the more advanced ways of doing storytelling with the 3-act structure, all that kind of stuff, it's like Citizen Kane was just a different beast in its time, and we forget that today. So that's something you got to keep in mind, KW. All right, Ben Rayner writes, why was 6 afraid of 7? Because 7, 8, 9. That's an old one, Ben. That is an old one. I've heard that one 100 times. All right, Rasmus Johansson writes, my top 10. A Fish Called Wanda. Ken is coming to kill me. I love A Fish Called Wanda. Aliens, Ghostbusters, Blues Brothers, Zodiac. I admit I'm not that big of a fan of Zodiac. I like Zodiac. A lot of people freak out about it. I personally think it's a little bit overrated, but that's just me. Shaun of the Dead, Back to the Future, The Emigrants / The New Land, 2-part film. The Man on the Roof. And The Man from Majorca, or The Man from Majorca. The Man on the Roof. Hold a second. I am not familiar with The Man on the Roof. 1976 film, although it looks like there's a 2016 version. But I am not familiar with it. Man on the Roof, directed by Leo Bulo. I don't know. I think it apparently got a lot of film fest. So I don't know if you're talking about the 76 or the 2016 one. I'm not familiar with that one. But I so love, that's the first time, Rasmus, is somebody put in A Fish Called Wanda. That is one of the all-time great comedy movies. Now, that's funny because then the identical cast got together. And what was the name of the movie they did? Hold on a second. A Fish Called Wanda... It wasn't a sequel to it, but the cast, that's it. The cast got together and did another film together in 1997. It's the exact same cast. It was called Fierce Creatures, which was also very, very funny. Not as good as Fish Called Wanda. Fish Called Wanda to me is simply one of the greatest comedies ever made, and I love that you got it on your list. All right. Last one of the day, and we are all caught up. This one comes to us from Warren Wright, who writes, top 5, not laminated. Writes 5, Spaceballs. 4, A Knight's Tale. I like A Knight's Tale. 3, Infinity War. 2, Good Will Hunting. And 1, really, True Romance. That's the first time I think True Romance has popped up here, Warren. Congratulations. You get to take the title of that one. That's the first one to come up here for True Romance. And you got Spaceballs in there. I always got to love that. So thanks, man. All right, guys. That will do it for this installment of the companion videos. We are now all caught up on the questions from earlier today. Don't forget, guys, another episode of the John Campea Show tomorrow morning. We're already working on a bunch. It looks like Hallie Steinfeld might be being looked at for the Hawkeye series. That and a few issues more we're already working on for tomorrow's show. Hopefully you'll come back and join me and Robert Meyer Burnett and Aaron Cummings then. Again, guys, thank you so much. And for all of you guys who sent in questions, thanks for giving us great fun things to talk about and for supporting the channel along the way. We all here at the John Campea Show, thank you for that. All right, guys, that'll do it for me for now. My name's John Campea, and until next time, bye-bye.